like you've been calling me. Why are you calling me home?
My family has been in the Kiowee River Basin since the 1780s, and I didn't get to live here until I was like 54 years old because there was a little bit of turmoil in my family. My grandmother raised about 600 acres of cotton every year on her farm over in the Kiowee Valley. And of course, Granny was not into doing any of this stuff herself, so she kind of turned the farm operation over to my mother, and Granny had a bunch of sharecroppers, one of whom was this young man who had been orphaned very early in life, and he'd been raised by the sister who was 11 years old at the time of their mother's death. My daddy did not get a whole bunch of education and had no money and had no land. Well, that made him definitely a no-no among civilized people. You know, our quality of people, we just do not run with sharecroppers. And so he was helping my mother run this enormous cotton operation and was very smart, very efficient at it. And when my mother announced that she was going to marry him, it all broke loose. And there was some shooting involved. And until my daddy died when he was 71 years old, he still had some lead under the skin of his chest where Mama's uncle shot him, and didn't kill him, but he loved to show the scars, you know, loved to show the bullets that were still there. Anyway, it was because he was a sharecropper. He had no land. We were not a money society here. We were a land society. We were not nearly as interested in accumulating money as we were that little piece of land next to us, you know. And one of the ways that you were more likely to accumulate that land is to marry it. Granny had picked out a relative who had a whole bunch of land on Kiowee River that she was wanting him to marry my mother so that they could put their land together. He was probably in his 60s at the time and was the meanest old man who ever lived. And one of his wives, he was so mean to her that she ran and jumped in the well to get away from him. So anyway, my mother just took off and without anything except the clothes she had on and ran away with my daddy from over in Walhalla. And they got married. And the wrath of the family came down on them forever. They went to South Florida, which was as far as they could go. So there was a lot of affection, I think, between sharecroppers and the people who owned the land, but not much socializing. I know of some people who were cheated blind, sharecropping types of people, by landowners who engaged a lawyer to write the contract, and the people by and large could not read and write, so they signed a lot of things, you know, that were not going to be wise in the long run for them. But people's word was generally pretty good back then. And so since we were not necessarily 100% literate society, the gentleman's agreement was pretty much held to. I think we were between a rock and a hard place, whichever side of it we were on. We desperately needed dependable, good people. And there were, surely, as Faulkner would have told you, Erskine Caldwell, a lot of barn burners out there, that if you did not treat your sharecroppers in the way that they felt you should, bad things could happen to your barn, your stock, your crops. I'll salt his land, I'll show him, you know. You're not going to treat me that way. So there was some of that. But on the other hand, there were basically no jobs. So if you did not own land and did not have the wherewith to make your crop and sell it, you weren't going to do very well. A lot of people, when the cotton mills came in like the 1890s, were so thrilled to get out of this sharecropping situation that they sort of turned life over to the mill owners, to the industry, the same way that they had to the landowners. Cash to us was not a matter so much of security. We didn't think of it as such. You didn't eat it, you know, and it didn't keep you warm at night. That's the way we looked at it anyway. But a lot of us who come out of this background, if we could make a living, would jump back in it in a minute, because it's just what we were. We had a deep affinity for the dirt. I know I was invited by a townie who lived out in California that I'd worked with at one point. She invited me to come out and see her. We would get in her car and she would drive us around to see all these things. And she'd say, "Well, what did you see today that impressed you?" And I'd say, "Dirt, dirt, 50 feet deep, dirt, I love this dirt." She thought I was crazy. I probably am, you know. But we do love dirt. What I see when I say security is a good chicken house with plenty of laying hens in it, a good running stream with fish in it, with a good wood lot. We'll have plenty of firewood, a nice green pasture land, and a cow or two, and a litter of pigs every year, fruit trees. That's security to me. Nothing stood between us and that but God. Now, everywhere you look, something stands between you and any security whatsoever.